All right, so Westworld episode 2 Chestnut. We're back with some more Westworld up in here hopefully before season 2 premiere. In this episode, we dive a little bit more into the world. We find a little bit more of what's going on, why this park exists, and all that other stuff. But before we get into all that, let's talk about this new character that's being put on stage, Maeve. Maeve's the robot that quote-unquote owns the tavern in town where people go to have sex with mostly women. I don't really remember seeing guys there to have sex with, which is kind of weird. This whole park is supposed to try to cater to everybody, give everybody an experience, but if there aren't guys there to have sex with, then it's kind of leaving out a lot of people. I don't really know, whatever. Anyway, we see some backstory from Maeve. She starts remembering a lot of stuff from her past, and we see what happens when robots remember stuff from their past. They get decommissioned, which gives a little bit more of levity and a little bit more of anxiousness as to Dolores' character, who actually does also start to remember stuff. And starts to remember stuff from Bernard and all that, and starts to quote Shakespeare, because I guess Bernard, talks with her about Shakespeare and all that, and quotes Shakespeare or something like that. And this is where it kind of derails a little bit, because this is what I boiled down HBO to. HBO, even though you can take risks, you gotta have stuff in the show that caters to the HBO crowd, I guess. Which I believe is because of Game of Thrones and how successful Game of Thrones is for HBO. Because once that goes off the air, folks, they're not going to have their flagship show anymore, so they're going to have to scramble to get something. They don't have to scramble too much, because you got shows like Westworld, like The Young Pope, which is also a limited series. I'll probably do some reviews on that, but they don't have to scramble too much, but they still have to find their flagship show, and I think this is what they're going for. But still, there's just a lot of similarities to Game of Thrones, to the point where this might as well be Game of Thrones in the future, I guess. Basic plots and basic storylines are completely different by all means, but there just seems to be a lot of needless sex put into this show. There seems to be a lot of cussing put into this show. And there seems to be a lot of blood and gore put into the show too, kind of like Game of Thrones, but not as much, which is kind of weird. I can't really detail it, but it just seems like even though the sex and the blood and the gore in this show kind of is there for somewhat of a reason, there's still some sex scenes in here that just throw some sex in there. Have the people wake up or whatever. I think it's almost like a requirement to have sex and cussing and blood in these types of dramas on HBO now. It's really fascinating, kind of weird. It almost makes me want to research, do they have to put this in this show? Because it seems almost unnatural in some points. And while it's true that they don't indulge it like they do with Game of Thrones, it's still there, and it's still kind of not really warranted, I guess. Because there are subtle hints of sex, but they don't dwell on it, but it's still there. And I don't care what everyone says, but not everybody thinks of sex 24/7. Oh yeah, and I'm sorry, I should have just told you guys this up front. So the memories that they're having, Dolores and Maeve and all that, there are dreams about the IT people clearing their memories or working on them or someone talking to them like Bernard is to Dolores and all that. And I guess how they discover that they're remembering stuff is they set off an alarm or whatever, or they start like malfunctioning in the park and then they have to be decommissioned because they're put on really monitored like frequencies or whatever. So it's kind of weird that they don't pinpoint to Dolores all that much. But I don't know. We still got 8 episodes to go, so maybe it'll be explained, but I just don't know. So then we have these two guys. These two guys kind of show us the travelers' point of view, I guess, like the visitors who travel to the park. So we get an inside glimpse into how we would go into the park and what we would do and all that. Instead of the robot's point of view, we get the human side of it too. So we get these two guys. I don't really know their names because, again, I gotta research them because their names aren't explicitly said, which is, again, good because, they're not like saying their name. People normally don't say their names just out of the cold blue or whatever. But anyway, here's these two guys. One is like extremely horny or whatever. And this other guy is about to get married and is kind of like not wanting to be there. He just wants to like be with his wife or something. Through their eyes, we get to see what every visitor sees when they go to Westworld. And because of that, I guess they're trying to put us into the characters. And because of that, it makes them really bland and not really having a lot of substance like Dolores or Bernard or anybody else. They just kind of seem really bland and not having a whole lot of character. But at the same time, that's what I think they're going for. They're going for putting us into this world and figuring out what we would do. But still, after pretty good character development between even Maeve, which I didn't even know really existed until this episode, or Dolores, or even Anthony Hopkins, which shrouded in mystery and all that. These guys aren't really shrouded in mystery. These guys are just like, boom, there it is, Also, this episode doesn't really have a lot to do with Dolores, and that goes again with the whole acting like Game of Thrones type feel to this show now that I'm seeing it. Like with Game of Thrones, they're trying to make it not have like a central main character, and the main character is actually these bunch of characters like with Game of Thrones or The Lord of the Rings, where there's not really a singular main character. It's just a whole aurora of different characters. And I know, granted, Lord of the Rings technically has a main character, Frodo, but still, I mean, we remember every character. And every character has probably almost the same amount of screen time as Frodo. And in Game of Thrones, every character has more or less the same like screen time than every other character, if not more or less, but still, I mean, there's not a central main character. And in Westworld, they're trying to do that too. I can see that happening where Dolores isn't really the main character anymore. Now they're trying to get more in depth into other characters like Bernard, Anthony Hopkins' character, which I still do not know his name. I just know he's Anthony Hopkins because he kind of plays Anthony Hopkins in every Anthony Hopkins movie. And the only thing we really get out of Anthony Hopkins' character this episode is that he may be talking to his younger self. I don't know. Maybe he has like there's some kind of little thing to it, I guess. A little mystery in there. Maybe he made a host/robot that he's talking to his younger self with, or maybe he developed time travel. I'm not totally sure. I don't know. There's a lot of philosophy and a lot of scientific jargon mixed into this show too, so it's kind of hard to really flesh out what's really going on here. And Bernard's character gets a lot more fleshed out as well. He has some more developments in his character. He still talks with Dolores to a greater extent now because he's trying to it's kind of like he's journaling his life with Dolores and kind of getting her kind of opinion about it, I guess, because he really doesn't have anybody to talk to, I guess. And also, just to throw another thing in the batter, he's sleeping with this tough woman that I don't know the name of, again. And I guess not knowing the name is kind of a double-edged sword now that I'm thinking about it, because even though it seems more natural, you don't know anybody's names. And I guess that kind of helps, but still, I don't know. It could be better, it could be worse. I mean, at least it's natural, and it seems like it could actually happen in real time, I guess. And as with the previous episode, and I'm going to probably take a wild guess with every episode in this series, the production design and everything in this show is truly spectacular. The camera work, the colors, the use of sounds and not sights is very superb. Like, it doesn't show you everything. And I guess that's the whole thing with J.J. Abrams' box theory, what's in the box. It's kind of, you can hear something, but you don't actually know what's going on. That was done pretty well in this show, and I can't really describe it to you, but it was just you hear a lot of stuff, but you don't actually see everything. Like, if there's danger coming, you hear it, but you never quite see it. And that may be due to the fact that it's a new show, so they don't know how far they can push it, how much money they're willing to invest in it yet. But still, it's truly spectacular. Every piece of production design is just awesome. From the costuming, to the lighting, to the cinematography, to the staging, to the prop design. Every piece of little substance in this movie, even the flies, okay? Even the flies have something to do with this. Even down to the flies. And we still dive a little bit more into the mystery of the park, what the whole stuff is, I guess. And now I can finally tell you why this whole season is called The Maze, I guess. There's a little bit of connection with the maze in this episode. The black cowboy, the cowboy that's dressed in black and all that. He's still expanding on the mystery. He finds this host or whatever that has a maze on his scalp. If you scalp him, you turn his top of his head over, there's a maze in his scalp. And I'm wondering what the heck that's about. And now I know why it's called The Maze. I can totally promise you that this can probably be diving a little bit more into the whole mystery element, what's going on with this park. And we also dive a little bit more into his character. For some reason, he gets whatever he wants. I'm not totally sure why. And he's also been coming to the park for 30 years. So it's not just opened. It's been open for a really, really, really long time. So I'm just wondering, when was this park made? What time are we in? We don't even know what time frame this whole world is put into. And that's what I find so intriguing about it, because we don't know. And I can't wait to find out. Again, because it's happening right now. And it's not like a legend or something that happened a billion years ago. It's happening right now. And I'm wondering what the heck is going on right now. This episode also expands on what the hosts tend to do and all that. Like, they practice over and over and over again with the IT people. And they talk even without people being there. And they practice over and over again for when there is. It's almost like they have some kind of consciousness to an extent. Like, it's not our consciousness, like we develop in whatever by ourselves, but they kind of seem like they have their own little consciousness to their own, like, soul. They seem to have their own somewhat of a soul to them as well. And we see that even further when, spoiler alert, Maeve wakes up after she's decommissioned and realizes where she is in a storage room with a bunch of other people, and she realizes that she's a host. And that, I didn't think we'd get this far in this one after episode 2. I thought this would come at least like in episode 8 at the very earliest, but not here. Which makes me think, oh crap, what are we going to do now? Where are they, what? Where are we going to go now? How is this show going to keep me invested? And there's just a couple of other really good things in this show. Like this little girl. I mean, I talk about child actors all the time, but whenever there's a good child actor in something, I got to point them out. This little girl, I don't know her name. I'm probably going to look it up later, but this little girl is really good. In fact, every time I'm invested in a child actor's portrayal of a character or something like that, I get really invested, and I just say it's really fantastic. So, good job, kid. You did really good. And the whole dream sequence as well. Like, we figure out that the black cowboy may be involved more than we think in the whole maze type thing. And this whole dream sequence kind of enthralls us with that. Like maybe there's a huge question mark about the black cowboy. And even though we get more answers to questions in this episode, we also get more questions to even it out, I guess. And I hope this doesn't happen all the time, because I know no J.J. Abrams in his box theory, but still. And I suppose there's a couple of not so good things as well in this show. Like the annoying British guy is still here. I don't understand why he's in here, why he's written so awfully. Maybe it's just because to show like how the scientists, I guess, are dicks to the robots or whatever, and just having sex with them on the willy-nilly, I guess. But even then, it just seems really off-putting. It makes me queasy, which I guess is what they're going for. But I mean, still, it just makes me kind of not okay with it, I guess. I just want him written off the show. I don't want to see him in the show anymore. Just get him out of here. Just have someone kill him or something. I mean, we see a lot of killing anyway, so might as well see him killed. Also, there's this whole thing about the host and the guy. I guess they're about to have sex. More sex in here. It just comes out of nowhere again. So overall, this episode did a really good job. If I had to rate this episode, I'd probably give it maybe a 75 out of 100, maybe. Somewhere in there. Because I'm not going to rate an episode, but I just feel like this is maybe a really great B- to a C+ type of episode. Because it answered a lot of questions. It did a lot of great stuff. But still, it makes me reminds me of like how the bad things of Game of Thrones and the whole HBO formula now. Like there's an HBO formula that I've conducted from this whole show and from Game of Thrones and every show that HBO has now. I've figured it out. And even if you have a formula, I guess you're supposed to hide that illusion to the best of your ability, or just make me disillusioned or distract me with more good than the bad. Because, like with Disney princess movies, they're pretty much the same type of story structure, but it's told in kind of a different and good way. Most of them are that you're distracted by the good instead of the formula. And as of now, this show hasn't really given me a whole lot. It's given me some, like, that's why it's like a B- or something, but still, I still see the formula. So they're going to have to really pick it up in the next few episodes in order for me to get really enthralled in this show. Because I'm already enthralled. I just need to get more enthralled. I want to get more. Set the bar up high, as I always say. All right, guys. Comment. Let me know what you guys think of this episode. Subscribe. I'm going to continue watching this show because I'm still a little intrigued as to what's going on. And I'm more of a completionist, so even if it's bad, I'm still going to watch all of it. And hopefully I'll review more episodes for you before Season 2 comes out on Sunday. All right, guys. More content coming your way. Take care.